Coburn right now. He's at the U.S. Capitol. Tom, I'm curious about what you think about it. Whenever I hear somebody saying we're taking the sequester limits off of anything, it makes me very nervous because it's the first time actually, in a long time that the federal government has held itself to some limits. That said, we want to avoid government by chaos and second government shutdown in a couple months. So what's your take on this deal?
Oh, Joe, I'm real disappointed in the deal. What is it that we don't understand when the GAO says we've got $200 billion in wasteful, duplicative spending every year, and what we do is we raise fees, raise money, steal money, raise the cost of pensions for federal workers, do all these other things in the out years that will never be guaranteed to be there, and say we cut a deal. I'm sure it's the best Paul could get. But it's not anything I can support, and if you really think we ought to be doing our job up here, what we ought to be doing is the hard work. We're going to put out the waste book again this year. It's getting ready to come out next week. It's got $25 billion in stupid spending this year. None of that's addressed in this. None of the waste, the duplication, the fraud, none of it. And yet here we're going to raise spending back up because the political powers that be want to spend more money rather than be responsible with what we know needs to be done up here, which is hard work eliminating all the stupidity and fraud and duplication that's going on.
Senator, you just raised that phrase that Bill Belichick, coach of the New England Patriots, uses all the time, just do your job. That's what he tells his players. Yeah. So in terms of just doing your job, you mentioned duplication of effort in federal programs. There's enormous duplication of effort. Give us a couple of examples of duplication of effort that costs taxpayers enormous sums of money.
Sure. We spend $31 billion a year on job training programs, of which all but 3 of those programs duplicate one another. In other words, do the same thing. That's 48 different job training programs. So if you can just consolidate those and put a metric on it so you have to perform, and by the way, the studies say they don't accomplish what they're supposed to be accomplishing anyway, but how about 3 job training programs, or 4 instead of 38? Or 47 is the actual number, 47. How about eliminating all the overhead, all the waste, and all the stupidity? You could save $9 or $10 billion a year. Senator, we won't do that. The House, by the way, did reform that, but the Senate won't take it up.
Senator, good morning. Harold Ford.
Hey, Harold.
Good morning to you, brother. I hear your resistance to this a bit, but what is our other option at this point? I imagine you may, I don't know if you're going to support it or not, and I hope that some of your ideas find their way into a larger deal. But at the moment, I think the country wants what the Journal expresses in its editorial, that we not have another shutdown.
Sure.
So do you see yourself supporting this?
No, look, what I can see as supporting is doing the hard work that we were sent up here to do. And what this is you've taken 2 very well-meaning individuals and hammered out an agreement to get past a political event, and the rationalization in Washington will continue. Right. It's too difficult. Remember, Nancy Pelosi said the cupboard's bare. There's no more we can cut. There couldn't be a more false statement said in the world in the last 10 years. There is so much waste, so much duplication, so much incompetency in the federal government, and nobody wants to do the hard work of fixing it, and Harry Reid certainly doesn't want to put it on the floor so it can be voted.
And David Axelrod, we've been talking about it, since the month President Obama got sworn in the first time. Been talking about the entitlement crisis, and you and I both agree we've got to address the entitlement crisis, and we just can't do it. Republicans don't want to do it. Harry Reid certainly doesn't want to do it. Democrats don't want to do it. And so there is a frustration for people like Tom Coburn, myself, and I don't know whether you put yourself in that position or not, of Congress not doing its job, the White House not doing its job, Washington not doing its job, and taking care of the big crisis that stares us down.
Well, look, I think we all acknowledge that there are some long-term issues that have to be dealt with. There are also short-term issues in terms of the economy. And as you pointed out, Joe, many times, we've cut discretionary spending quite a bit. I don't disagree with Senator Coburn, by the way. Anybody who spends time in Washington understands that there are savings to be made, and it's hard to get them because the bureaucracy safeguards those. But we have cut very, very deeply into discretionary spending in ways that haven't been good for the economy. My question for Senator Coburn, though, is, and I want to pile on to what Harold Ford said, if not this, what? And if you oppose this deal, do you believe that there is a better deal to be had at this time? Or I know you were against the shutdown in the first place. What is the alternative to this deal that Ryan and Patty Murray have struck?
Well, here's what I would say is keep the sequester levels exactly where they are and charge Congress with eliminating just duplications. Let's don't worry about fraud, incompetency, inefficiency. Let's just eliminate duplications over the next year. You can pay for 2.5 times what the sequester is. And just check, Congress, every dollar you do there, we're going to have an agreement. We're going to go on and function the government. Every dollar that you save is a dollar we'll add back on sequester. In other words, we won't raise taxes in the future. We won't raise airline fees for people who are traveling. They said there's no tax increases. All of it's tax increases because eventually an American pays for it. So they did raise taxes. So the fact is with all this duplication, so have Harry Reid and John Boehner say, here's the different programs, GAO, go in, clean them up. Here, for every dollar you save, we'll add $1 back. And I'll guarantee you, if that's the only way we do it, we wouldn't have a government shutdown. You'd see members of Congress and committees actually doing what they were supposed to have been doing the last 10 years, which have not been doing.
Mike, two things not in this deal: unemployment benefits that are about to expire for a lot of Americans, and the debt ceiling, which is going to have to be dealt with next year. What's the right political strategy for Republicans on those two issues?
Well, I think the debt ceiling is particularly interesting because I think there's going to be some energy in the House caucus to go back and relitigate it again because the politics of Obamacare have changed so dramatically. But look, I'm a practical politician, so my view is the problem with the U.S. Senate is we don't have enough Tom Coburns. I would like to get some more. We got an election coming up in a year. I think we have a huge opportunity to do it. So I'm in the risk management business politically in the short term. I don't want to give the Democrats fights on their terrain over the next 4 months to blow the huge opportunity over the next 12. So I think we should pass the debt ceiling. I think we should pass this bill, and I think we should fight and win the longer battle where we can. We have an incredible opportunity.
So raise unemployment, give people extended benefits.
We got to haggle that out a little bit. That's a negotiation. I think it's bad policy, but something has to be done on the political side so we don't open it up to a demagogic Democratic issue.
But can I just say one thing? We went through this several weeks ago, and these guys, men and women in Washington, were not able to achieve anything. I don't disagree with anything that Senator Coburn has said, that Joe is saying, that you're saying, but the reality is, if we try that path again, we will likely end with the same result. This is not a great deal, but it's a start.
Yeah,
and Joe, I mean, as much as I know we both want a bigger deal, you've written about this for many years, you fought for this in the Congress. What's the alternative? I think Axelrod's question was the right one to Senator Coburn. If we don't have a viable alternative, if we just have rhetoric around what it should look like, what is the alternative but what what Paul Ryan and Patty Murray put together?
You know, it's amazing. It went right over your head.
This is what happens all the time. I'm sorry, Tom. Really quickly, Harold. I'm sorry. I thought you were talking to me. And then
I'm sorry. I was asking you that.
Okay. So here's my problem. Then, Tom, I'll give you a crack at it. My problem is this, and we saw this back in the 1990s. Whenever Newt and the House Republican leadership wanted to pass something by conservatives that they knew they couldn't pass by conservatives, they just wouldn't do regular order. They would go behind closed doors. They would get deals done, and then they would give us about 5 minutes to read over the most massive omnibus appropriations bill. They did it in 1998. They basically say, vote for this, or else you're the perfectionist caucus, and you're going to destroy the United States government. Think about how much time this Congress has had off over the past 2, 3, 4 months. Think about what would have happened if we would have actually had regular order and we would have been debating these issues in subcommittees and then committees and then on the Senate and the House floor, and then we would have gone on and we would have actually had this debate over the past 3 or 4 months. And the great ideas, like the ideas that Tom has, would be aired out and would be debating them every day on TV instead of having leaders go behind closed doors, come up with this massive deal, and then come out and stick a gun to conservatives' heads and say, you either support this are you for a government shutdown? That's how they continue shoving these bad deals down our throats, and that's why conservatives are repelled by it. And Tom Coburn, I'd like to say it's only been happening the past 4 or 5 years, but think about the 1998 appropriations bill, the omnibus appropriations bill. They couldn't do their job all year, so at the end of the year, they passed the biggest spending bill ever by basically throwing it on the floor and giving us just a little bit of time to read it. This has gone on for too long now.
Again, what I would say is there's no leadership. The leadership would say, be Willie Sutton. Where's the money? The money's in duplication, fraud. That's where the money is. It's $250 billion a year, and most of it's in the discretionary accounts. $100 billion of it's at the Pentagon.
Senator,
$100 billion is at the Pentagon. So why would you not say, let's go clean up this mess? No other business gets to do this. No other organization anywhere in the world gets to run this way. And instead, what this deal does, this takes the pressure that needs to be on the discretionary programs, both defense and non-defense, for efficiency, new ideas, innovation, better ways to do it, and takes it off.
Senator Nicole Wallace, I want to ask you something, because I think most Republicans in their hearts, obviously Joe Scarborough is one of them, are with you 100%. But I think our heads are telling us that if the two most respected voices, I'd put you and Congressman Ryan in that category, on fiscal matters, are so sharply at odds on this deal, how can we lead not just the country, but the rest of our party to where Mike Murphy wants to take it, back in the majority in the Senate? And I would guess that if a camera were on David Axelrod, he'd be smiling and maybe breathing a sigh of relief right now that you and Paul Ryan are so sharply divided on this budget. Because
no. Paul was given a task. He was told to go do it.
And he led. You just called for more leaders. Paul Ryan has led.
He has led to make a compromise that sells out what actually needs to be done.
But you just called Paul Ryan a sellout. I mean, I feel like if you and Paul could agree.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said he was told to lead a compromise. A compromise is going to give up your principle. He said last night on the TV that he doesn't think people have to give up core values. We gave up core values. We called non-tax increases tax increases.
Senator, where you could accept, I'm a 100% Coburn groupie, and I'm so sad to hear you so disheartened by this deal, because I was so inspired by Paul Ryan's leadership on this. So, I mean, again, anything that makes David Axelrod smile makes me cry, and I feel it'll make him smile to hear you so negative about this deal this morning.
Let me add one other point.
You're smiling,
just one
David.
other point.
I'm smiling because I'm happy that a guy Tom Coburn's age and my age can still have groupies. I think that's a great.
I'm both of your groupie.
Let me make one point. Is everybody's always worried about the politics? That's exactly what's wrong with Washington. Everybody says, well, how does this affect the next election? You know what? I don't care how it affects the next election. What I care is us quit rationalizing that we're always going to do it right when we finally get in charge. It never happens. And so we can rationalize that we're not going to have a government shutdown, we're not going to raise the debt limit, or we are going to raise. I don't care. The fact is the country's going down the tubes, and all this does is add to it.
Can I just add a note of agreement with Senator Coburn on a point here, which is I do think the 47 job training programs is a great example. There's no reason for 47 job training programs. We ought to look for better ways to get the job done, but we ought to agree also that there are jobs to be done. Job training is important. There are other programs that are important. If there are better ways to do it, more efficient ways to do it, we ought to do it. My problem with what's gone on in Congress lately is you've got a no government caucus that doesn't believe any of these programs are worthwhile, or we have any obligations, and that's a bad direction for this country.
Senator Coburn deserves one of the two profiles in courage. Him and Durbin were the two people that voted for Simpson Bowles, and I give him great credit for that, but I hope he can support a deal here at the end.
All right, Tom Coburn, we want to thank you so much for being with us. Great talking to you. You certainly made some news, and you also made Nicole Wallace very sad.
Don't forget the Waste Book next week. You'll love it.
Yeah, you know what? I'm actually getting a copy for my 5-year-old boy. I'm going to start teaching him.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you too. Hey.